China still sees Iran as a challenge for the United States hegemony in the region from at the diplomatic and normative levels. And it sees this pressure useful sometimes. For example, it sees it useful in distracting the United States away from the Indo-Pacific, which gives China the space and the time to increase its influence in the region. It also raises the cost for the United States initiatives and preferences and interests in the region, which is always useful for China.
Since the beginning of the Iran war, everyone has been talking about China, looking to China, asking for China to be the sort of adult in the room, given the behavior and antics of the Trump administration. China is an economic powerhouse. It is a military powerhouse, but it has perhaps yet to come to its own in terms of becoming a diplomatic powerhouse. It's still feeling its way around. I'm Borzou Dergahi. This is my podcast. It's called Badlands. You can subscribe and get free content, sometimes paid, at borzou.substack.com. That's BORZOU.substack.com. I'm joined today by the very smart, very intelligent, very well-informed Ahmed Aboudouh, and he is a China expert specializing in China's relations to the Arab world. Ahmed is a senior fellow at Chatham House, and he's head of the China program at the, what is it called? The Emirates
Policy Center.
The Emirates Policy Center, which is a think tank based in the United Arab Emirates. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining me. We're old colleagues, actually, from The Independent. So he's, in addition to being a scholar, he's also a journalist. So he's got a lot of bandwidth. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Bozo. I'm very happy to be with you, and thanks for mentioning the good old days at The Independent.
Yeah. I have just a simple question for you. What is China's role right now? There have been a bunch of reports that include, for example, this incredible FT report that China sold Iran a satellite that it has been using for precision targeting. There is a report that a member of the Emirati royal family, it was turned away. I think that was not a credible report, was turned away in China, seeking some kind of pressure on Iran. What is China's stance in general, as you would summarize it, with regard to this Iran war?
Well, I think China's stance can be summarized as a cautious mediator who wants to see stability in the region genuinely, because they care so much about stability all over the world, not only in the Middle East. They have big chunk of their energy coming from the Gulf as well, so they don't want to see volatility lasting long, even beyond the war, for the energy to arrive at China's shores. So stability is the only one, or the only way that can guarantee this. And also, it doesn't want to see Iran fighting with its neighbors, the Gulf states. And if you recall, China put its stamp on a remarkable deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran back in 2023, which is surprisingly still standing. And we could see, for example, the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia receiving a phone call from his counterpart in Iran discussing the escalation. And this is the works of this deal. So Iran wants to see both sides of the Gulf restraining themselves from expanding this conflict, but also it wants to see its relative stability in the bilateral relations with the US continuing, especially amid the visit that President Trump will make to Beijing next month. And it sees Iran war as an unnecessary distraction that can affect negatively this visit. And you could see that the visit was originally scheduled for April, but it has been already postponed because of Iran war. And China doesn't want this to happen again, especially because they see this summit as the most consequential diplomatic event in 2026. And also they will want to focus on other things rather than Iran, especially the trade war that is going on between the two countries and Taiwan. So in conclusion, I think China genuinely want to see a ceasefire, a lasting one, and without bearing any responsibility or taking any risky moves for its interests in the future.
Now you also have these reports of weapons and satellite information and satellite technology being provided by China to Iran. This is a longstanding relationship that goes back to the 80s. I mean, China has long been a provider of weaponry to Iran. What about now? Are they providing, not that it would be illegal at this point to sell Iran an advanced satellite, but is that something that China has been doing and trying to keep quiet?
Well, it's a very important question because a lot of the leaks coming out of Washington indicating that China has been selling advanced and sophisticated weapons to Iran lately. And generally, I take these reports with a pinch of salt because China doesn't want to be standing or contradicting the international community, and we know that the UN sanctions on selling weapons to Iran have been reinstalled lately. And China really regards its relations with Iran's rivals, the Gulf states, very highly. And in fact, the numbers when it comes to trade and investments make this partnership more consequential than the partnership between China and Iran. And also, it doesn't want to confront the United States because it regards its bilateral relationship with the United States far more important than its partnership with Iran. But China has been selling, and there is evidence for that, dual-use technology. For example, the engines for drones, the solid fuel for missiles, access to the Baidu navigation system, which is the alternative of the GPS. And lately, as you mentioned, the FT revealed that Iran had access to one of the espionage surveillance satellites from China.
Again,
I'm not
would that be considered dual use in your opinion, that satellite?
I'm not sure what this satellite is used for, these things are very classified, and neither China or Iran talk about it openly. But in the end of the day, this trend we have seen before in China's dealings with Russia, for example, and providing it with crucial material for sustaining its war against Ukraine. And for example, some reports show tremendous improvement in the targeting of Iran's platforms compared to the 12 days war last year. And of course, this technology is not coming domestically from Iran, but it's coming from China. So I think in a way we cannot see that there is a trend of Chinese sophisticated and game-changing weapons going to Iran. But we are seeing under the radar secret transfers of dual-use technology that is still crucial for Iran's military industry, and I think will be very important going forward to rehabilitate this military industry.
You know, someone I was talking to, a Russia expert, once told me that don't listen to what Putin says when he goes to G8 summits. It was G8 back then. And his nice and polite words. Putin likes what Iran does. Putin likes that he has this attack dog out there screaming death to America and challenging the US hegemon and so on. I wonder if China also has a certain ideological alignment with Iran that makes its relationship, although not quantitatively as important as that with the other Gulf states, especially Saudi Arabia, or definitely not with the U.S. with its strong economic ties, but makes it qualitatively not more significant, but of a different level of significance to its ultimate hegemonic aims.
I say absolutely not, and I don't see any ideological component in this partnership. In fact, quite the contrary. When you speak to Chinese colleagues in Beijing, they always complain about Iran's behavior in the region, and they see it destabilizing, and they see it unnecessary. And in fact, in their private conversations with Iranian colleagues, they always convey the message that, guys, you have to change this trajectory. You have, first of all, to open up your economy and seek partnerships, even with Western powers. You have to stop financing proxies all over the region, and you have to get rid of your ideological underpinnings of exporting the revolution to your neighbors. And they always say that this trajectory will take you to the end of the Soviet Union. So you have to change it and adopt the Chinese model of development, which is dedicating your resources, financial resources, and economic and energy resources to your own domestic needs and your own population, and focus on long trajectory of economic development and opening up, just like China did in 1980s. So the Chinese always, when you speak to them, of course, privately, they are not very happy with what Iran is doing. And as I said before, I think they see its behavior as destabilizing not only for its neighbors' interests and security, but also for the long-term stability that the Chinese overall interests need for the what they call the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and China's rise peacefully.
That's very contradictory to what people like, for example, in think tanks in Washington would say. They often view China and Iran as kind of geopolitically aligned, part of an Eurasian axis that is aimed at challenging Western, especially U.S. hegemony. You're saying that that's basically not the case, that China has evolved to the point where it sees Iran's behavior as problematic as the West does. Why doesn't it pull the plug on Iran, for example, at the UN Security Council? Why is it always seen to be enabling Iran?
Because of two reasons. I think because China has a long-standing tradition of non-interference. And in this case, this non-interference goes to all countries because China really upholds these principles because it doesn't want external powers to intervene in its own domestic affairs. First. Second, although I said that there is no ideological alignment between China and Iran, and they are not very happy with a lot of what Iran is doing in the region, China still sees Iran as a challenge for the United States hegemony in the region from at the diplomatic and normative levels. And it sees this pressure useful sometimes. For example, it sees it useful in distracting the United States away from the Indo-Pacific, which gives China the space and the time to increase its influence in the region. It also raises the cost for the United States initiatives and preferences and interests in the region, which is always useful for China. But if the threshold goes beyond this normative and diplomatic pressure, China starts to get worried.
With regard to China, it also has, it should be said, extensive and deep ties to the Gulf states, especially Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates as well. Can you describe that? Can you just kind of briefly give a summary of China's relations with those Gulf states, diplomatic and economic?
Well, when it comes to the economic aspect, I think China sees these countries are very crucial because China's economy now is going through a phase of stagnation and it has an overcapacity industrial problem. That means it wants to find markets for its cheap goods to be sold. And the traditional markets are now raising the barriers, whether that is in the United States or Europe. So it focuses now on a lot of markets in the global south, first and foremost, ASEAN, and then the Gulf states and other countries, of course. So the Gulf states has this consuming power that it can absorb these goods. Second, it sees it as an arena for investments of the BRI, a very important one. And third,
the BRI is the Belt and Road Initiative,
Belt and Road Initiative.
The kind of equivalent of the, superpowered USAID that is part of the Chinese government that expands and invests all over the world, bridges, tunnels, infrastructure projects, energy projects, etc.
Correct. And it sees it as a venue also for technological cooperation and to expand the technological footprint of China, whether that is at the technical level and the technology level and regulation level. And also it sees it as a source of energy Although a lot of debate is going on around this, whether that is a crucial aspect or threat to China's energy security or not, I lean towards the latter. It is really not, but still, big chunk, around 50% of oil, for example, imported oil, come from the Gulf. Um, and very important thing, China adopts a hedging strategy between Iran and the Gulf states. That means it is following a balanced policy between both of them and doesn't want to take sides, although its partnership with the Gulf far outweighs its partnership with Iran. And also there is another hidden aspect that is the Gulf states take this into consideration in their dealings with China. They always want to deepen their partnership to create influence over China's partnership with Iran. They don't want China to be closer to Iran than their relationship with it.
Of course, we never get access to these the real nuts and bolts of these diplomatic meetings, high level especially. What do you think might have happened with this meeting, with this visit to China, and then the subsequent outreach by MBZ's brother, I think, who is a high official in the UAE, to Mohammed Bakr Ghalibaf, just yesterday, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament and the current power broker in Tehran? What might have happened if you could speculate?
Yeah, it is speculation. We can't do anything more than that. So the official that went to Beijing is Sheikh Khalid bin Mohammed bin Zayed, who is the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. And
I see.
as a matter of speculation, I think first and foremost, the visit might have focused on the economic cooperation between both of them because there was a business summit, China EU UAE business summit that happened on the sidelines of this visit. But also they cannot convene with Xi Jinping without discussing the war. And I think part of it is encouraging China's diplomatic effort, but also part of it is discovering avenues for China to increase its pressure on Iran to de-escalate at least its attacks on its Gulf neighbors. And this is a very important aspect in the relationship, and I think something that is China uniquely positioned to do because the United States cannot exert this pressure on Iran, neither the European powers. So I link the call between the two UAE and Iran officials yesterday and put it in this framework. They tried to de-escalate, and I think Saudi Arabia started this trend to directly reach out or receive call from Iran, and the UAE is following suit because Gulf countries know that after this war, they will be left to face the consequences in their relationship with Iran. They will be left to face the pressure if there is no comprehensive ceasefire signed between Iran and the United States. And I think they want to find a mechanism to mitigate the risks of this post-war.
Yeah.
And China, of course, will help a great deal if they are willing to help.
So why doesn't China do more? Why does it seem to be having a standoffish attitude? Some people were thinking it's like they're watching the United States make the biggest mistake of a generation. Why stop them? Would that be part of Chinese strategy thinking? Like, what the hell are these guys doing? Let them do it.
Well, this is a very important question, and I asked this question to many of my Chinese friends, and the answer is very interesting. There is this argument now that is circulating in Beijing that says that China is very worried about the stability of the world order, not America's mistakes only. So when America is unpredictable and less constrained by the rules-based international order created in the first place and weaker, it tends to use its military power more, and it tends subsequently to destabilize the world order. And China really relies on the stability in this world order for its ascendance or rise. And the war in Iran gives us a great test run for this thesis. And for the first time, and this is very interesting, for the first time ever, I see China exerting real pressure in public on Iran since the blockade that President Trump decided against Iranian ports. And I think China sees this as a risk, but also as an opportunity that helps it to leverage its influence over Iran to push it to go back to the negotiating table. So, in a way, China cares first and foremost about the regional stability, more than the stability of the regime in Iran, more than the scarcity of the energy, which is short term, and the Chinese understand that. And China is well positioned and insulated to deal with this energy crunch. But they really care about the long term stability. And you could see that from the language that Wang Yi has been using with both the Iranian foreign minister and the Pakistani foreign minister to encourage these negotiations to resume.
China also does have some relations with Israel. Is that an area that it is interested in applying pressure? It does seem to some extent that Israel was the incubator of this war, if not the complete, it's not totally the perpetrator. It was cooked up in Israel. Is there any signals from China that it is thinking at least about checking Israel's ambitions and its actions?
I think since the Gaza war, there is a thinking in China that sees Israel as a destabilizer actor as much as they see Iran's actions as well in the region. And I think they see that always as a general perception of Israel, even on social media in China, they see it as as a front or a proxy for the United States in the region to serve the United States interests in the region. And they never have, these two, they never have full trust in their bilateral relationship, even if when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to gain some autonomy in the relationship with the United States by deepening Israel's ties with China, it didn't go anywhere because of the pressure he received from Washington to stop that. And after Gaza, I think we are talking here about a different kind of relationship between China and Israel. Before, the relationship was centered on technology cooperation, given how Israel is advanced in this field. But after the Gaza war and the subsequent destabilization of the region and confrontations, I think the trust in Israel has reduced dramatically in the perception of China and its intentions and its readiness to jump in to support their enemy, which is Iran diplomatically at least, and to shield it from international criticism or sanctions as much as it can, while criticizing Israel in public since the Gaza war very harshly sometimes. So I think they see China as perceiving Israel as a punching bag and a player that cannot be trusted at all.
You're watching Chinese media, Chinese signals, speaking to Chinese officials. Do you get the sense at all that China really wanted Iran to do well in this war, or at least maybe not win, but at least do well and give the U.S. and Israel and Israel a black eye at least?
Well, you mentioned social media, and interestingly, there are a lot of posts that actually criticize the performance of Iran in this war, not only in this war, even the 12 Days War, and they see it as a weak, highly infiltrated, and also disorganized when it comes to its military performance and defending its territorial integrity and security. So there is some resentment from Chinese netizens, or the netizens it means in China, the activists of social media. But at the official level, I think it is out of question. It's a great power, two nuclear powers actually attacking for the first time a non-nuclear power that is under sanctions for decades, and basically it won't have a chance to resist or put up a fight. So I think it was out of question, but a realistic assessment of the Chinese perception is that Iran is not compatible to fight or resist long in such a war, and it has to find an off ramp as much as Trump is trying to find an off ramp. And China is helping both the United States and Iran. In fact, I would say even they are telling the Iranians in closed doors that we are doing this for your own good and for your own interest and security because you don't have a chance. So help us in this job and get back to the negotiating table and reach a long-lasting peace with the United States and Israel.
It was obvious that the Chinese were the key factor that got the Iranians to go to Islamabad for those talks. What about right now? What are you picking up in terms of the next round of talks? Is there continued pressure from China on Iran to come up with some kind of deal?
I think if we see that China's intervention, which this time is forceful, I would describe it, given the diplomatic culture and tradition in China, and if we agree that this is not part of trying to shape the outcome of this war or the regional order, but it's a risk management against systemic risks that the Chinese see. So I could see that there is a difference since the blockade has been implemented by President Trump because of the main factor that China wants to see an end to this war before Trump's visit to Beijing. Second, it sees it as an opportunity to take away the Strait of Hormuz card from the Iranians, which, in my view, the blockade does that effectively. And since this card has been taken away from the Iranians, it opens an opportunity for Chinese diplomats to pressure the Iranian counterparts, hoping that they will listen more now since their cards have been less than before.
When you talk to Chinese think tank people, officials, etc., what do they think of Iran's nuclear program? Do they think that it's a waste of money and effort and diplomatic capital, or do they think that Iran should continue with its, rights and keep its nuclear program?
Well, we have to divide China's perceptions into two parts. The first part is China absolutely stands against Iran having a nuclear weapon.
Sure.
And they said that publicly, they say that in
They
their
agreed
state.
to the sanctions in 2010, etc. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they helped President Obama to reach the GCPOA in 2015. And they said that even in their bilateral meetings with Iranian officials, that they are against the proliferation of nuclear weapons in the Middle East. This is one of the fears that makes them take this stance. But also, there is another one that China is worried that by acquiring a nuclear weapon, Iran will establish deterrence against the United States and Israel that will make them think twice before attacking it. The same trend might be repeated in East Asia by China's rivals such as Japan, South Korea, and Australia against the Chinese predominance and hegemony first. But the second part is that China argues that Iran has the right to have a nuclear program for peaceful purposes. And China stands with Iran on that. And I think also that serves China's own interests because it has a nuclear program, although it is also a military program, but it wants every country to be able to take its own decisions and adopt or acquire a nuclear peaceful program for medical purposes, for any other civilian purposes.
I have a kind of complicated question for you that I've always wondered about. Chinese diplomatic, international, public communications are always so cryptic and anodyne and just they never have any bite. They always seem, rather well-crafted statements that say nothing. Why is that? Why is it? Do they just have a different view of diplomacy? There's never any subtext. There's never any kind of hinting. There doesn't seem to be as tough and interests oriented as its policies and actions and military posture is. Its public statements seem completely out of tune with that. Is that like a cultural thing having to do with the Chinese culture? What is the reason for that, and how do you uncode the Chinese diplomatic messaging versus its real world actions?
Yeah, well, it is, you rightly said it. It is connected to the diplomatic culture and strategic culture in China that doesn't like to go into details, and it depends on prearranged settings that cannot accept any mistakes. First, second, I think it's also related to its interests because China, as a power, wants to be engaged, but without any responsibility or commitment. So it doesn't want to present itself as for example, a guarantor in the war that is going on now. And it never said that in the deal that it brokered between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And also, we have to understand something else about the mediation culture in China. They do not see mediation as a venue to exert pressure on any of the players. In fact, they just want to provide the venue and to leave both parties to talk and to sort things out in between themselves. And they can come in and facilitate on intricate and difficult points, but that's it. They do not come in and say, if you don't do that, we will have to do this. You don't leave us in your room apart from hurt you in this. They don't do that. And that's why I think they keep it very broad, very general, and it also very theoretical that sometimes lacks operationalization on the ground. For example, the 5 points proposal that China puts out with Pakistan, it is just a general language that expresses China's principles without putting plans for it to be operationalized and to lead to a certain direction.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. It's been a real pleasure speaking. Again, everybody, this is Ahmed Aboudouh. He is a expert on China's relationship with the Middle East. He's at Chatham House and at a think tank in the United Arab Emirates, where he's head of their China program. Joining us from London, is it today?
Yes, it is London.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bozo, for having me. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Again, I'm Borzu Deragahi. This is my podcast. It's called Badlands. It's at borzu.substack.com. Please subscribe, share, hit the like button, whatever. And thank you for listening or watching.